Hi everyone. Today we are going to have a look at quadratic equations. Only simple ones today, and we will gradually move on to complicated ones later on. The main focus for today is just to show you what quadratic equations look like and then what kind of solutions you get for them. So, quadratic equations. Basically, if you remember all the equations you've done in school so far, so for example, let's say 3x plus 2 equals to 8. This is called a linear equation because you can more or less represent it in terms of a point on a straight line. So if you say equation straight line y equals to 3x plus 2, then what you end up with is a straight line like this, and it has a y-intercept of 2 and a gradient of 3, so it's pretty steep line going up. Yep. Now, what this equation represents is when the what the x value is when the y value is 8. So when y value is 8, yeah, so y here is 8. So we go down. So if you draw everything perfectly, then it should be a 2 here. But if we can solve this algebraically, we just say, well, 3x, we minus 2 from both sides, so it's 6, and divide 3 by both sides, so x equals to 2. Yeah. So every equation looking like this is basically a solution on one of these points. So a pair of x and y value that matching this straight line. So that's why they call it linear equations, because all of them can be solved by a straight line. Now, what we are doing is quadratic equations. So quadratic equation is slightly more complicated. If you recall previously, let's say x squared equals to 16. Yeah. Now, this, if you remember from year 8, when you have a square term, when you solve the equations, you have to undo the square, which means you have to take the square root of both sides. Yeah. Now, here's the interesting thing, because x so has to be because not just, obviously you can say that square root of 16 is 4, but there's another number, negative 4 squared also equals to 16. So we have to account for both answers. So what we need to write is plus or minus square root of 16, which x equals to plus or minus 4. So there are two solutions here, either 4 or negative 4, because 4 squared is 16, negative 4 squared, negative times negative is positive, so it's also 16. And that's one important feature of quadratic equations. So just by the way, whenever you see x to the power of only 1, that's a linear equation because it's a straight line. Whenever you see power of 2, it's a parabola. So it's a quadratic equation. And we can also represent this question exactly the same way. So for example, if we have a curve y equals to x squared, so you remember from previously, it's just a default parabola. So I'll do my best on this part. Okay, so we have a parabola, and x squared equals to 16. So this is y equals to x squared, which means here the y value is 16. So we have 16 here. And then if we try to find the corresponding x values, so of course this is not to scale and not done perfectly, but if the parabola is done perfectly, you will see that the x value on this point would be positive 4 and the negative 4 respectively. So that's the essence of quadratic equation. They generally can be represented as points on a parabola, and usually there are 2 points, yeah, 2 because there are 2 x values for each y value, and you end up with 2 solutions. Okay, let's try another one. So let's say, what about 3x squared equals to 72? Actually, sorry, 75. Okay, so it's exactly the same. We'll do it algebraically first. Do you remember order of operations x? It's x squared, then multiplied by 3. So if we want to reverse operations, we have to go from L side in. So we have to divide everything by 3 first. Yep. So we end up with x squared equals 25. And then, of course, we take the square root of both sides. And we end up with x equals to positive or negative 20. Sorry, correction, negative 5. Yep, so that is our solution. Because, of course, a negative 5 squared is also 25. And if you want to look at it graphically, it's something like this. So you have a parabola. Because the 3 here, it's actually a very narrow one. And then you have 75 here. Obviously, it's once again, it's not to scale. And then, of course, you have 5 and negative 5 here. And the parabola itself would be y equals to 3x squared. Now, for the rest of this topic, we're trying to do mainly focus on the algebraic expression, because it's not very convenient to draw a graph every time. Next one is, of course, we can also try, even if everything is on the same side of the equal sign. Yep. So, of course, we do it as you do with all equations. You just cancel out the 12, so you end up with 3m squared equals to 12. And then you divide both sides by 3. And you have m squared equals to 4. And of course, you take the square root of both sides, and you end up with m equals to positive or negative 2. So once again, do not forget there are always 2 solutions. So yeah, that's some basic quadratic equations in a nutshell, and we'll move on to more complicated stuff later on. And so there is that.